Welcome, councillors, officers, members of the press and public gallery. Please be upstanding. We, the councillors of Hobsons Bay, recognise that we are privileged to serve in a community enriched by diversity. We respect and value our community's backgrounds, customs and beliefs, and declare that we will always act impartially to the best of our skill and judgment. Through our deliberations and our conduct, we will uphold council values to deliver outcomes that enhance the city of Hobsons Bay. I would like to start this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We recognise the First People's relationship to this land and offer our respect to their elders past and present. Please be seated. This meeting is being live streamed on the council website to enhance public access to deliberations of council. The meeting is also being recorded as a podcast and will be made available on council's website. Councillors, there's no apologies to be granted, noting Councillor Hempel's leave of absence. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare?
Well, I do, because I've got a conflict with Techno Drive, Park Homes. A family member of mine works there with maintenance work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gruen. We've got a number of public questions on Techno Park Drive, and so, yeah, thank you. Councillors, the first item is a recommendation from council officers that council defers the adoption of the minutes of 11th June 2024 to the council meeting on 13th of August 2024. I'm seeking a mover.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, and a seconder.
Happy to second.
Seconded by Councillor Briffa. I'll put...
Can we ask questions about this recommendation? So the acceptance of these minutes has already been deferred. It was deferred in the prior meeting. I'm just interested in knowing what would happen if this recommendation is not successful, or is it just assumed that this will be successful?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Callender. Ultimately, that's in the hands of council. We make recommendations. They have no standing until they're moved and seconded. If council was of a mind, they could adopt the minutes in the form that was presented on the meeting of the 25th. Alternatively, they could make further changes to the way in which those minutes are reflected, and by resolution, they would then be published accordingly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No further questions.
Thanks, Councillor Callender. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I haven't concluded that vote. All those against? Motion is carried. I've had a division called by Councillor Callender. I'll put the motion to the vote again. All those in favour? Councillor Marsden, Councillor Tyler, Councillor Grimmer and Councillor Briffa. And all those against? And any abstentions? Councillor Sutton-Legault and Councillor Callender. Thank you, councillors. Next item is 4.2, confirmation of the minutes from the prior meeting. The minutes of the meeting from 25th of June 2024 have been circulated. I'm seeking a mover.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, and a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Briffa. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Councillors, the next item is councillor questions. I'll start on my right. Councillor Callender.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First question through you. Can you please advise why the 11th of June 2024 council meeting minutes were uploaded to the council website and they have now been removed from the council website shortly after they were deferred at the last council meeting?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Callender. They were removed primarily because Council didn't adopt them and wanted further advice as to the redactions that were considered in a particular part of the minutes, and accordingly, that's why they were removed.
Thank you. Through you again, Mr Mayor. These original uploaded minutes did contain redacted content, which has just been acknowledged, with the executive advising that they were reviewed by lawyers who determined that the paragraph should be redacted, which by default also determines that everything else in the minutes was fit for public viewing. How much did this original legal advice cost?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks again for the question, Councillor Callender. $1,200.
Thank you. The next question. Councillor Briffa, who wasn't in attendance at the 11th of June meeting, moved to have the original minutes deferred with the support of Councillor Grimmer, Councillor Marsden and Councillor Tyler as Mayor for a reason that they were not willing to disclose in the chamber. Will further content be redacted from these minutes?
Through you,
Point
Mr Mayor.
of order.
Just one moment, Mr McLeod. Councillor Briffa, point of order.
Yes, please. Sorry, let me just grab it from the relevant area, from the governance rules. Councillor Callender's comments were I'm going to say improper, because it wasn't that anyone didn't want to provide reasons why or anything like that. That actually didn't happen. That's rewriting history. The Councillor Callender's comments were improper and incorrect.
Councillor Callender, the motion that came before the chamber previously was a procedural motion to defer, which isn't subject to debate. And so I'm going to uphold the point of order, but also give you a chance to re-ask the question, the same question, noting the point that Councillor Briffa has raised. Just your mic.
I'm happy to rephrase that question. I disagree with your ruling, but again, I'm happy to take that on board regardless and rephrase that question. And I'll start again. Councillor Briffa, who wasn't in attendance at the 11th of June meeting, moved to have the original minutes deferred with the support of Councillor Grimmer, Councillor Marsden and Councillor Tyler as Mayor. Will further content be redacted from these minutes?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you again, Councillor Callender. That's not a question that I could answer at this time. The reason that...
One moment, Mr McLeod.
I'm sorry, Mr McLeod and Mr Mayor.
Councillor Briffa.
My point of order is improper. And I'm saying improper because the fact who moved, who seconded it, whatever, has got nothing to do with who redacted it. Like, we didn't determine the redacting or any further redacting or anything like that. The motion that we moved, the resolution of the council, was purely about deferring the motion, so that deferring the approval of the minutes. That's all it was about. It wasn't about redacting.
One moment, Councillor Briffa.
I think that's yet to be seen.
One moment, Councillor Callender. Thank you, Councillor Briffa, for raising the point of order. I note that the question states the facts around who voted which way, and then asks a question about whether or not there will be a subsequent redaction, and so I'm happy to allow the question. I see the two things as separate as the question is asked, and I don't see them as improper.
Yep, yeah, that's fine. As long as that clarification's there. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Briffa. Mr McLeod.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. It's not a question that I can answer at this point. As I've addressed, I have sought further advice on the basis of the deferral and so I don't know what the opinion will be of the lawyers when they provide their advice to me. So we will put forward the minutes as advised by council's lawyers.
Okay, thank you. Next question through you again, Mr Mayor. It was advised tonight that we could adopt the minutes as they stand, but it now appears that according to the resolution, further legal clarification is being sought following the deferral. Who's paying for the additional legal costs that are being incurred?
Through you, Mr Mayor, council will be paying for those costs.
Okay, so ratepayers. Next question through you, Mr Mayor. When a nature strip tree on council land blows over or a branch breaks and falls onto private property and causes damage to that private property, leaving the owner out of pocket on costs, who's liable given that the tree is a council asset?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks again for your question, Councillor Callender. That's not a question that's straightforward to answer and not something that I'm in a position to provide advice on. Council has its insurers and there is a multitude of legislation that obliges council to do certain things and highlights certain things that council are and are not liable for. That's a specialist insurance question and not one that I'm able to answer.
Okay, next question again through you, Mr Mayor. A resident homeowner has made a complaint to me whereby a council tree on the nature strip fell and it landed on the two neighbouring properties. Both homeowners have been left with out-of-pocket costs of up to $1,000. One homeowner has since been reimbursed for her claim, and her neighbour, however, an elderly migrant couple who are not tech-savvy, have not been reimbursed, even though the exact same tree caused equal damage to these neighbouring properties. Does this seem like a reasonable and fair outcome?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Callender, for your question. I don't think I'm the one to adjudicate on what is and isn't fair. There are rules and policy positions that council's insurers apply. There's processes for review to ensure fairness and equity in the application of it, and there are statutory authorities that are there to be able to examine where individuals themselves are still not satisfied with an appeals process. So it's not something that I can provide an answer to.
Next question, Mr Mayor, off the back of that response. As I noted, the migrant couple have difficulties with English and are not tech savvy. What assistance would council provide them in making any claim?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Our property and insurance team are always there to assist a claimant making a claim, filling in the applications and the like, as are our customer service teams. And we find ourselves doing that on quite a number of occasions. So if there is difficulty, if there is assistance that's required in putting forward a review of an insurance determination, then I'd encourage the individual resident you refer to contact our customer service team or our insurance team.
Last question, Mr Mayor. How is council promoting its free parking to bring people in to visit Hobsons Bay, noting that it's obvious that parking fees have impacted patronage?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Callender. Was that, sorry.
Councillor Briffa, point of order.
Yeah. Thank you. My point of order is that the comment that the parking meters
Just which part of the governance rules, Councillor Breffer?
patronage, yeah, I'm just explaining.
Sorry, you go.
Is, yeah, sure, sorry, is, well, it's irrelevant, improper. I mean, we don't actually have any basis for that. There's no data to actually say that is actually the case. So it shouldn't be portrayed as fact when it's not.
Councillor Breffer, just so that I understand that your point of order relates to the question being asked by Councillor Callender, a portion of it being both irrelevant and improper, because
Yes.
there's no basis as it relates to the facts of the claim that parking underpins the patronage to a area.
But that's right. And if the answer was just given, then it would be like we've just accepted that that's a fact when when it's not. There's so many other factors that are affecting patronage of of shops and restaurants, cost of living, land tax, all sorts of different things.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Breffer. I appreciate the point. I don't think it's irrelevant or improper, and so I'll allow the question, but I appreciate you raising that there are a range of factors that impact patronage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr Irving.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. In relation to promotion of the free parking that is available at the moment, there'll be a number of stickers or plaques going around in the areas of Altona and Williamstown. We'll also be having media release, social media comms to ensure that that's promoted throughout the city, but also far and wide from the city, because we're looking to promote the works of the Williamstown, the Winter in Williamstown as well.
Thank you, Mr Irving. No further questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callender and Councillor Grimmer.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have a question. I believe it's directed to Mr McLeod. Can you tell me what Hobson Bay charged to release an animal from Hobson Bay Council?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Grimmer, and through you, Mr Mayor. That's not a straightforward answer. When council officers seize an animal that is on the streets, we'll do everything we can to return a registered animal back to their owner. So in those instances, there is no cost. Where we have our weekend and after hours service, where council doesn't have staffing to collect animals that might be stray or on the street, we use the Lost Dogs Home. The Lost Dogs Home charges $600 to release their animals back to the individual resident, and $400 for collection. So it can be up to $1,000 depending on the length of time that an animal resides with the Lost Dogs Home.
Thank you, Mr Cloud. That's all, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer. Councillor Sutherland, go.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Recently we requested notification of the Council's view on the Champion Road crossing to be sent out to residents, particularly those in the Champion Road area. Could I get clarity on whether this has been distributed and where we're up to with that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. So council officers have been working through the preparation of that material. As you would have understood from more recent events, there's been some recent updates that have needed to be incorporated into that, and so very hopeful of getting that correspondence out over the completed and out between now and mid next week, but depending on getting that locked into the distribution schedule, but very close to being circulated.
Thank you. So do I understand that will go out this month?
Yes, so this month, but I'm reluctant to give a date only because there needs to be some bookings locked in with the distribution channels.
Thank you. And in relation to the free parking, could I ask officers just to clarify why we introduced free parking? As obviously we thought it might have an impact on retail trade.
Councillor Sutton-Go, thank you for the question. I'll tackle this one with Matt. I think it's the Winter in Williamstown Festival is for the sort of few months up to the 1st of September. So we'd already made a provisional agreement that obviously that parking in the winter months, and it might support the additional events that we're putting on at this time. So that, and that obviously we didn't want to do that in Williamstown at the disbenefit of everywhere else. So it was an intention to do it everywhere to support the particular events that council is holding for that specific period and that other people are holding in Williamstown, such as the Solstice at Sea work. So that was the intention.
So could you just clarify when it finishes?
Off the top of my head, I think it's the 1st of September, because that's when the winter period officially finishes and the events that council's supporting either financially or otherwise are concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton-Go. Councillor Marston. And Councillor Briffa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, questions from me just around the parking and parking permits. Can the council officer tell me who can access parking permits for the parking meters in Hobsons Bay?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Briffa. Look, all residents of Hobsons Bay can access free parking permits, which allow them to park free of charge, obviously obliged to comply with the timed-based restrictions, but there'll be no fee charged.
Excellent. So they can apply. It costs nothing to apply and to get one for residents, and then they don't have to pay for the parking meters. So, how many? Do you know how many people actually park at the Altona Beach or foreshore to dine in Pierce Street?
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Briffa. I could not tell you,
Yeah.
but in terms of our parking income, if that's an indication of external people from that obviously don't have resident permits, the income that we generate is significantly lower over winter than it is in summer.
Thank you. And just finally, how many parking meters are there in Pierce Street and Harrington Square?
Councillor, sorry, you've caught me short. I'll need to take that on notice on the actual number, because we've been progressively removing them and moving to an app-based system.
Yep.
So I'll come back to Council on that one.
Okay, just to let you know, there's none. There aren't any. That's why it was a trick question. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Briffa, and thank you, councillors. The next section is public question time. The public question time segment provides an opportunity for the public to ask questions related to items on the agenda of the council meeting or any other matter within council's responsibility. Questions must be put in writing and be received by 12 p.m. the day prior to the council meeting. Questions received after this time will be responded to in writing by the appropriate council officer. In accordance with subsection 13.1 of the Hobsons Bay Governance Rules, 20 minutes has been allocated for public question time, with individual responses not exceeding 2 minutes each. In accordance with Rule 13.1.14, a maximum of 3 public questions may be submitted per meeting by a member of the public. And in accordance with Rule 13.1.11 of the Hobsons Bay Governance Rules, the person who submitted the question must be present in the public gallery during public question time for their question to be read out. There are a number of questions related to Technopark Drive that, following Council's letter to people living at Technopark Drive and other state government bodies on the 13th and 14th of June, can now be answered today. These questions and answers will feature in the Council minutes as normal and also be added to the questions and answers page on Council's Technopark webpage.
Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest. I have a family member who's working on maintenance work at Techno Drive Homes, so I will remove myself from the chambers.
Thanks, Councillor. And the first questions are from John Link. Hi, John. Welcome. And John's first question is, will you continue trying to evict some people from Technopark, or will you put every effort to keep them with their roofs over their heads. And the council officer's response reads, the ability to apply for existing use rights certificate to be able to comply with the planning regulations has been open to all residents of Techno Park since February of 2024. In April, and again in June 2024, council explained in writing that any further enforcement action has been paused until on or after the 1st of October 2024, or until council or VCAT has determined certificates or declarations as to the existence of existing use rights. As set out in council's letter to everyone at Techno Park Drive from 14th of June 2024, this pause is to allow time for people at Techno Park Drive to apply for a certificate of compliance under Section 97N of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to establish existing use rights for residential uses. Officers advised that no applications have been made at today's date for Techno Park. John's second question reads, does Hobsons Bay City Council really believe that it is transparent as stated verbally and on letters? And the council officer's response reads, yes, council is committed to transparency in accordance with the Hobsons Bay Public Transparency Policy 2020 and the Local Government Act 2020. Our public transparency policy is available on the public-facing website. The policy includes how to raise a concern about council should you wish. The next three questions are from John O'Hagan. Hi, John. Welcome. John's first question is, how many applications for certificates of compliance based on existing use rights has council received and assessed over the past 20 years? And the council officer's response reads, council's electronic records show 13 applications for certificates of compliance. No certificates of compliance for any sites have been determined since the legal changes by the Planning Minister in February 2024. Again, officers advise that no applications have been made at today's date as it relates to Techno Park. John's second question reads, Council's 2020-14 Amendment C96, proposed rezoning and planning permit, numbers 222 to 258 Corrick Creek Road, Williamstown North, states that, and John's question quotes, Hobsons Bay Caravan Park relies on existing use rights to continue operating as a caravan park. Did council require the residential caravan park to apply for a certificate of compliance in order to avoid eviction from the industrial zone? And the council officer's response reads, at the request of the private landowner, the land of the former Corrick Creek Road Caravan Park was rezoned from industrial to residential in circa 2015. Council understands that the land was sold after the rezoning. The reasons for anyone leaving the caravan park are a matter between private tenants and the private landowner. The original caravan park operated under a valid planning permit and therefore there was no need to demonstrate existing use rights. A certificate of compliance is only a consideration for use without a valid permit. John, I know you've asked related questions previously, and I know council officers would be happy to sit down if you wanted to sort of step through any of that in more detail. They'd be very open to that. John's third question reads, has council received responses to their June letters to WorkSafe and the EPA? And the council officer's response reads, both WorkSafe and the EPA have acknowledged our June letters. We expect discussions and responses shortly. If council is legally able, we will make any responses publicly available on our Techno Park webpage. The next three questions come from Brian Hogan. Hi, Brian. Welcome. Brian's first question reads, on June 21st, in response to an inquiry from council the week before, Mobil confirmed that the tanks of the South Crude Tank Farm are not in use and will not be used again. This is consistent with the information about the future of the refinery sites published on Mobil's website since 2021. Prior to the June letter, when was the last time Council sought an update on the status of the South Crude tank farm? And the Council Officer's response reads, WorkSafe is the state government regulator of major hazard facilities, including the tank farm. Council is legally required to follow and take into account directions, notices and requirements from WorkSafe. Council is yet to receive any direction from WorkSafe that ExxonMobil's letter to us on 21st June 2024 has removed any safety risk at Technopark Drive. It is WorkSafe and not Council who will make these decisions about future hazards and safety matters regarding major hazard facilities. ExxonMobil organisation, as set out in their June 2024 letter, is undertaking studies and considering the future uses of the site. This position has been explained to Council in recent years. As of today, ExxonMobil's operations permit has not been altered and revoked by WorkSafe. We are seeking confirmation of any change from WorkSafe. Historically, WorkSafe and ExxonMobil have been referred planning applications for their responses, including that at JT Gray, which another of your questions relates to. Their responses to Council on these planning permit matters to date have required us to apply conditions to any permits issued on the basis that the South Tank Farm was in use. At today's date, WorkSafe and Council still have to make decisions that are consistent with WorkSafe's state guidance note entitled, quote, land use planning near a major hazard facility, end quote. Council has written to the Minister for Planning asking for more guidance on planning decisions impacted by major hazard facilities. Brian's second question reads, in November 2020, Council received a planning permit to upgrade the JT Gray Reserve Pavilion, which required it to make changes to the plans due to the proximity of the South Crude Tank Farm, brackets at that time part of the active Altona refinery. In February 2021, before building works started, Mobil announced it was closing the refinery and developing an import terminal and storage facility. Did Council inquire with Mobil at any point before building the new specs about the status of the South Crude Tank Farm post-refinery closure? And the Council Officer's response reads, in 2020, Council notified ExxonMobil of planning application PA 1944738 relating to the redevelopment of JT Gray Reserve and Pavilion. ExxonMobil provided a submission to the planning application, including recommending conditions relating to the building's design and construction to make provision for a major incident within the South Tank Farm. That included emergency management procedures and risk mitigation measures. WorkSafe and Council make decisions that are consistent with WorkSafe state guidance note entitled, and again quote, land use planning near a major hazard facility. And Brian's third question reads, how much was the original budget for the JT Gray Pavilion and what was the eventual total cost? And Council Officer's response reads, project works have been carried out at JT Gray Reserve over the past 4 financial years, including construction of a new pavilion, car park upgrades, construction of new cricket practice nets and improved lighting to one of the ovals. The contract for delivery of the pavilion and car park upgrade was awarded in 2019 at a value of $4,176,320 excluding GST. The actual costs for delivery of the pavilion and car park upgrade were, I'll start that again, the actual costs for delivery of the pavilion and car park upgrade works were $5,745,000 excluding GST. The additional costs were attributable to agreed scope changes with tenant clubs and adjustments to comply with planning permit conditions with major hazard facility requirements. Thank you for your questions. Councillors, the next item is petitions and joint letters. We'll just wait for Councillor Grimmer to return to the chamber. Are there any petitions or joint letters to be tabled?
That's
Next item is 8.1.1, the Chief Executive Officer's Report on Operations. Are there any questions, councillors? Seeking a mover. Moved, Councillor Grimmer,
Second.
and seconded, Councillor Marston. Councillor Grimmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to encourage all residents to get access or to read the CEO's report, which identifies council's services that many may not be aware of. Some examples include residents who are older to have assessments that support, and Meals and Wheels is one of them that you receive. We have viable and wonderful markets, the Altona Meadows Regional Farmers Market, Cherry Lake Lions Club Market, and Williamstown Regional Market. And we have much more, but I'll speak to that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer, and Councillor Marston is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate the team on the extraordinary mobilisation that is the winter in Williamstown and associated festivals. It's a dark and cold time of year, and in places like Commonwealth Reserve can be underutilised due to the season, but it's been activated by these number of offerings, including a projections program which lights up a series of buildings, and this means that in addition to the points that you've made in your Merrill program, supports the activation of the retail precinct to encourage trade, and the lighting project was in response to a 2023 Pitch Your Project idea. So another excellent idea from our community which has been realised now to great success. And in addition to that, we've had the Williamstown Literary Festival, which is a highlight of my year. Again, a dark and often cold time of year, but when you're tucked up in the confines of the town hall with a hot chocolate, penciling notes on your program and discussing which writer or speaker you'll see next, it's a really good way of not only keeping warm but also strengthening community bonds in a time when often people are at home with their feet in front of the heater. I've noticed, and people have probably seen themselves, that there's billboards out there, information stalls at the Literary Festival, social media advertising and online information around the solar panel, Solar Savers program. And this is a way of making it easy for residents to seek advice on installing solar panels and batteries by researching product suppliers and rebates on behalf of residents. It's a confusing and freewheeling market landscape, and this is a good way that we can help our residents understand what the options are and who the trusted suppliers are as well. There's a couple of current consultations I think we should be aware of, and one of them is the Reconciliation Action Plan refresh. We'll be speaking with direct stakeholders, including local elders, Bunurong Land Council, Aboriginal Corporation, the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and we do have a very active Torres Strait Islander community in Hobsons Bay. First Nations owned or operated businesses and creative sector community representatives active in reconciliation, and of course our sister city, Yarrabah Aboriginal Shire Council, who are obviously very knowledgeable in this space and dear to our heart. You can have your say until the 23rd of this month. Similarly, there's a consultation opened on the website to rename the HC Kim Reserve Pavilion, and that closes tomorrow, so get your skates on. But all in all, an excellent summary of the various and multitudinous activities that we've been up to in this lovely city of Hobsons Bay.
Thank you, Councillor Marston. I think you could probably write for the Literature Fest at that rate, a beautiful description of the event. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? I'll return to you, Councillor Grimmer, as the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I want to also acknowledge the artistic support for our vibrant artists. They include Wood Street Art Space workshops displayed in Laverton, and also other display artwork around Hobson Bay. I also want to acknowledge the policing support, such as Coffee with a Cop we had recently at Cheeky Chew's Cafe, which I attended, and we've received really great feedback from residents. And I want to acknowledge the council staff who got that event going. It was really well received, and also it was just such a, I think it's an important issue to connection with the police, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Councillor, the next item is 8.1.2, recognition of Hobsons Bay residents awarded King's Birthday Honours for 2024. Are there any questions? Seeking a mover. Moved Councillor Callender and seconded Councillor Grimmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to start by saying well done to Bashar Houli. He clearly has achieved a lot within the space of AFL and both as a representative of the Islamic and multicultural communities. He's a role model for young men in our community to look up to, and it's great to see a King's Birthday honour awarded to one of our residents. As part of the honour award, a long list of achievements have been noted spanning decades, and these include the following. Within the Islamic community, he's a founder of the Bashar Houli Foundation. He's a director of the Islamic College of Sport, board member of the Islamic Museum of Australia since 2023, and ambassador of the Islamic Museum of Australia since 2014. From a multicultural community perspective, he's an ambassador for the Athletes of Hope, reference group member of the Australian Government Multicultural Framework 2022, and a community advocate. Within AFL, I'm sure he's got a long list of achievements that fall outside of these noted ones, but he's a multicultural ambassador since 2012, former member of Racial and Vilification Subcommittee, player for the Richmond Football Club. He's played 206 games, 3 premierships, All Australian 2019, and he's a player for the Essendon Football Club as well. He played 26 games. Additional awards and recognition also include Torch of Justice Award, Anti-Defamation League 2021, the Jim Steins Community Leadership Award for the AFL in 2020, the UCAN Award for Australian Football League in 2019, Victorian Multicultural Commission Award in 2018, Award for Muslim and Non-Muslim Understanding for the Australia Day Council in 2012. Congratulations to Bashar Houli on this well-deserved achievement.
Thank you, Councillor Callender. Councillor Grimmer.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Callender's highlighted a lot of his great achievements. I'm a Tiger supporter, so I will continue. I met Bashar Houli in May last year with MP Melissa Horn and Ingrid Stitt at the announcement by the state government for free kindergarten. I was impressed by his speech, which supported the integration of our local community and the Muslim community, and to involving all residents of Hobson Bay, especially women in sport. That really inspired me. He embodies the ideas of multiculturalism in Australia, in which we all should be so very proud of him. And I want to say well done, well deserved, and congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Marston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to add my congratulations and gratitude to Bashar Houli, OAM, who is a really charismatic leader, an inspired speaker, and a role model for many of us in Hobsons Bay. I'm really proud that he's a local. He's a friend of the council, has been for many, many years, and supports the work we do. And we, in turn, support him I look forward to seeing what he gets up to next. Maybe he should run for council.
Thank you, Councillor Marston. Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Briffa.
Why would he do that? Please save him. I just want to thank him and congratulate him on this award as well. In particular, I'd like to call out the wonderful mentoring and work that he does in the space of people with mental health. And look, I just think that that's such an important area, particularly for young people. So the work that he does there is really pivotal, and yeah, definitely well worth this award. So congratulations, Basher.
Thank you, Councillor Briffa. Any other speakers? I'll go back to you, Councillor Calendar, as the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to sum it up and say congratulations on the well-deserved achievement, Basher Hooley, once again. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Calendar, and thank you, councillors. I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously, and echoing others, couldn't think of a more deserving recipient, and a massive congratulations to Basher on his contribution over a significant period of time, and well-deserved recognition. Councillors, the next item is 8.2.1, Amendment to Council Meeting Timetable 2024. Are there any questions? Moved by Councillor Sutton-Legault, and seeking a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Marston. Councillor Sutton-Legault.
Thank you. This is an amendment to the council meeting timetable for 2024, and it seeks endorsement of the changes to the council meeting timetable that we adopted at this meeting, and authorise the CEO to further amend the meeting schedule for September, October and November should special circumstances arise. These amendments have been made to the local government electoral regulations due to the Victorian Electoral Commission advising that the current election timelines are no longer viable. So there are several changes, including when our meetings will occur due to the election period commencing, when we effectively go into caretaker mode, and the closing of the postal voting, and then the election results to be declared on the 15th of November, when new councillors will be sworn in. And I have noted the signs around the electorate encouraging people to stand for council, and I do encourage you to stand for council. So I'm happy to commend this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton-Legault, and Councillor Marston. Any other speakers to the motion? Go back to you. Put it to the vote. Yep, I'll do just that. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Next item is 8.4.1, the draft commercially operated share scheme policy, in brackets e-scooters. Councillor, are there any questions? Councillor Calendar.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have a few questions. Just wondering what the consultation will actually involve. What will it look like?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So we will have the draft policy up on the Participate page. We'll be promoting that through our social media aspects, allowing people to provide feedback on the policy, and through general forms in that space. There's no anticipated where we're going to do any drop-in sessions at this point in time, but we would look to potentially go outreach to a couple of our libraries and set up some small posts there if people want to come and have a chat to us at that point in time. But going through a pretty standard approach to consultation on this moving forward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Next question, just wanting to clarify, just to make this clear for anybody who's listening, is it Council's intention to allow commercially operated e-scooters to operate within Hobsons Bay in addition to the bikes?
The draft policy, as it's put forward tonight, it does allow the provision for the potential for e-scooters from a commercially operated perspective to come into the city, but then the policy also outlines some clear regulation and aspects and the requirement to meet an agreement with Hobsons Bay City Council before e-scooters will be able to come into the city. Knowing this is a requirement from the state government, the agreement must be reached with the local council.
Thanks for that, Mr Irving. Next question, through you, Mr Mayor. how much money is council making, or does it envisage to make from this scheme annually? Because I assume that these operators can't just bring their bikes and scooters here for nothing.
Thank you for the question, councillor. The modelled and the potential amount that could be generated in terms of revenue would be $438,000 per year, but of course that's on the maximum that we have the maximum amount of vehicles deployed into the city. But is noted the policy puts forward fee structure for these to operate moving forward within the city.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Next question. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay. What is council doing within this policy? What's embedded within the policy to help keep residents safe? So safe from people riding erratically, safe from where they place their bikes as well. And also, I guess, safety is not necessarily the right word in this instance, but just from an amenity perspective, what's council doing to address that?
Thank you for the question. So the policy clearly sets out a code that we'll be seeking for commercially operated operators to abide by when we reach agreement. The policy puts forward that agreement must be reached before any systems put in place. That code around amenity puts a lot of stipulations around where parking of e-scooters must be, noting that we have stipulated that they will be outside of activity centres. They need to be free from areas where walking is occurred, and that we need to have oversight on where those key designated areas for parking will be. So that'll seek to resolve the issues around amenity and safety from a parking perspective. In terms of safety from a moving perspective, we have put some aspects within the policy, but it is noted that road rules, which are enforceable from the state through VicPol, is where the main aspect of regulation will come from movement moving forward. It is noted that e-scooters are only permitted to be on road. They are not to be permitted on footpaths or shared cycle paths at this point in time under current Victorian road rules.
Thanks for that response. And final question, outside of this consultation in itself, because we do already have bikes on the road under this operated scheme, if anybody within the community does have a complaint or a concern, who should they contact?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think you're asking if with current e-bikes potentially being on the road, they can send them through to council, and we will we're aware that the Beam is operating within the city. It is noted that e-bikes do not require an agreement with the local council, and that's the reason it is operating. But we do have a communication channel, and we do regularly report issues and incidents where there's a reported incident from the community related to e-bikes. But also noted if the issue is around a movement or a crash that is involved, it would be best to report that through to VicPol as well as because they are an enforcement agency under moving violations in the state.
Thanks. No further questions, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Calendar. Any other questions? Seeking a mover.
Moved.
Yeah, moved by Councillor Marsden. Seconded by Councillor Sutton. Go. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So we all know the current disorderly and quite untidy sight of e-bikes and other bikes strewn across the city, dumped on footpaths, roads, parks, and often obstructing pedestrians. So this is not a good look, and while the law may not allow us to prescribe where those bikes end up, this policy allows us some leverage in forming a contract and agreement with an e-bike operator that if they do want to bring their brand of e-bikes in and their brand of e-scooters, then they'll have to abide by the policy, which lays out a few ground rules. It doesn't seek to tie the organisation's hands when it comes to negotiating contracts with these organisations, but it does put some boundaries in place, such as geographical restrictions, the fact that there will be fees owed to council, that they'll need insurance, that we have the right to withdraw or terminate the commercially operated share scheme if the operator has not adhered to the requirements, or we can pause a commercially operated share scheme for a short time in full or part with immediate effect. And this is the enforcement stick. Formally, Section 11 incorporates this into the community local law, should it be adopted in time, to allow us to effectively control the rather sprawling and unsatisfactory situation at the moment, where we really have no leverage, because bikes under Victorian law have enjoyed the freedom to ride wherever, with the exception of the footpath for certain classes of people, but since time immemorial, whereas e-scooters, being relatively new appearances on the scene, have attracted a new legislative framework after a trial was conducted through the inner city councils and one country council. We had a decision to legalise e-scooters in April 2023, and the Victorian government allowed private e-scooter use under certain conditions, but importantly, e-scooters used as part of a share scheme must sign an agreement such as we're putting forward in order to commence operations, and the policy that we're putting up for consultation tonight outlines the framework by which that contract would operate. E-scooters are very popular, and various jurisdictions have dealt with it in various ways. But places like New York have got a very advanced system of clustering these vehicles, e-bikes and e-scooters, at certain locations. They've got hundreds of such locations, and that has the effect of clustering them and not allowing them to be strewn across sidewalks, as they say in New York, and thereby obstructing walkers. Walkers don't have a lot of space as it is, and particularly people with low vision or blind people find it hard to negotiate these discarded bikes. So I think this is a really sensible policy, one that puts us in control of where e-scooters and e-bikes appear, and, as has been discussed in questions before, insists that e-scooters and e-bikes be only used in the road and not on the footpath, because not only is this a sensible thing, but it's also Victorian law. A problem with e-scooters in recent years has been the fact that they've been launched from the footpath. They've been driven on footpaths, they've been driven into people, they've caused a lot of heartache and injury, and often those people were not insured. So this aims to curtail the areas in which those e-scooters can be ridden, improving safety, and most importantly, making the town a lot more tidy, which I think will be popular with residents. But I look forward to see what people say. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Marston. Councillor Sutton, go.
Thank you. Not too much more to add to my colleague's overview. I think it is good that we're commencing community consultation, and I look forward to the feedback. I would remind the community that you can give feedback. If you see a bike, for instance, that's been parked in a strange place, you can report that to the company. There's a number on the side of the bike, and there's a barcode you can scan and report the bike. So that is good. It is encouraging people to move around the city, which is not a bad thing, and maybe it gets people out of their cars, which is also a good thing. So there are some positives to having these e-scooters and e-bikes available, but I think just a little bit more sensitivity about where they're left would be very helpful. But again, I'm happy that this recommendation is being made and that we'll have the opportunity to hear from the community. And $500,000 of revenue potentially into the council's budget is not a bad thing either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton-Legault. Any speakers against the motion? And any other speakers? Councillor Callender.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I want to acknowledge the comments made by Councillor Sutton ago. Agree with the comments she's made. I'll keep my views brief and say that people that I speak to either love these bikes and scooters, or they just absolutely hate them. But regardless of your views, now's the time to make them known by participating in the consultation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callender. Any other speakers? I will return to you as the mover, Councillor Marsden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks to my colleagues as well, because it's true that I did focus quite a bit on compliance. This gives us an instrument to control what is a really unsatisfactory situation. The history of e-bikes in Melbourne has been really haphazard and arrogant, I'd say. The first funds that set up e-bike schemes in Melbourne really didn't consult at all with local or state government, and they just put bikes out on the street as they were allowed to do. And because of that lack of social licence, Melbourne went nuts. They threw bikes in the rivers, into trees, made them into sculptures. We had to enact our shopping cart law to be able to confiscate some of these errant bikes, and then when they moved out, they just left them there to rust for us to dispose of. It was really unsatisfactory, and it's a terrible way to start what could be an amazing scheme. And so to go to my colleague's point, it is good to have people riding, scooting. We lack the infrastructure in Hobsons Bay. We're not moving quickly enough on the provision of a third space, something that's not on the road, something that's not on the footpath, but rather a place where people can ride at 25 kilometres an hour, which is the mandated limit for e-bikes and scooters on the road. And in order to build this, we need money. This could be a source of those funds. So if we do achieve the income we seek, and of course we can increase it in later years, then we can fund some of that infrastructure. But yes, it's a good news story. It's just been a very ordinary run-up to a public e-bike, e-scooter scheme in Melbourne, which is hopefully not fatal to the chances of adoption across the city. Unlike in France, where they've banned these things because it just proved too chaotic. Paris is an excellent place for cycling, but they've completely banned e-scooter schemes because of the risk to pedestrians. So let's avoid that. Let's build good infrastructure, and let's wield a big stick to make sure that people do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsden. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Good discussion. Next item is 8.4.2, Laverton Swim and Fitness Centre, July 2024 works update. Are there any questions? Councillor Sutton, go.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have some questions. This is regarding the redevelopment of the Laverton Swim and Fitness Centre. I note that we are recommending that an additional close to 600,000 is allocated by a council to this project, and I'm wondering two questions. Why we're adding an additional 600,000 when originally we were talking about $500,000, and why this wasn't included in the recent budget that we've just signed off.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. In terms of the why, so we're in the process of completing works in partnership with Bluefit. Knowing Bluefit has become the operator late last calendar year, and advised that they needed to do significant works from their perspective, especially around the amenity aspect. But we also noted that critical infrastructure works were required at the site, mainly from a renewal perspective. In terms of the budget, there was a $500,000 allocation in that budget, and that was based on the cost estimate. But as does happen when you're dealing with significant building projects, some issues have came up, in particular around some of the structural elements and the critical pool plant. The reason that we're bringing forward and recommending that additional investment occurs is to ensure that the facility can operate over the course of the next 10 years, which is the lease that has been entered into. And that is a reasonable amount when we consider the renewal spend required at a facility of this nature over that life expectancy. And I might just need you to repeat the second question before I go to answer it.
Just asking why this wasn't included in the recent budget and how it's going to be covered.
Whilst it is acknowledged that the recent budget was only just recently adopted, officers did a lot of work in preparation of that budget around about, and finalising that around that 4 to 6 week mark ago, sorry. In terms of the last, these issues have really materialised in terms of the cost, obtaining the cost estimates and really fully understanding the need and the scope of the works over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And that's the reason we're bringing it here. And that's the reason it wasn't adjusted at the budget time that has just recently been adopted. It is noted over the course of financial years, from time to time, projects do require additional funding to ensure that they can be completed. In terms of where the funding will be obtained, so we have the annual building renewal program, and that's where we take funds from when there are critical building renewal works that need to be completed on projects. And this is critical to ensure that we can get the facility reopened and people back in there and the operator working, and that's where it's looking to obtain the funds to allow for this work to be completed.
Thank you very much for that. This seems like a change in the strategic approach to this asset. I don't have a particular view on whether or not we should invest further funds, but my understanding was that we were phasing this asset out in light of the fact that we were going to, or intending to build a new aquatic centre. And if we're now saying that we're committed to this project, this asset for at least the next 10 years, it does seem like a change in strategy by the council. Can you comment on that?
Thank you for the question. I think the strategic position of the council is for the Laverton Swim and Fitness Centre to remain open until the point in time that the potential Western Aquatic facility does open. I still believe that this does align with that strategic position, noting that we don't necessarily have the committed funds. We are advocating very strongly, but we don't have the committed funds from the federal level to allow that project to go forth. And it is noted that even if, when we get to that point where the project can be funded, that the build time could be 3 to 5 years. So when we anticipate those timelines, whilst it's not a perfect that I'm envisaging that the next centre will be open in that 10 years, it does align with the fact that we have obtained a lease for the new operator that has started with us at Bluefit, and I still believe that it does align with the strategic position of council at this point in time.
Thank you. And if you'll indulge me, I'd just like to make a comment why this didn't come to us earlier. We've only had a week's notice of what has been quite a controversial and important asset for the community, and it feels like this is another matter that's come to us quite late. Is there a reason why it's just come to us now?
Thank you for the question. As I noted earlier, that really the aspects are certainly around the scope that we were needed to deliver to ensure that this works can occur, and that the costings really have only materialised in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I understand that we are bringing that quite quickly from that point in time to this, but it is noted that for us to ensure that we can move forward the works in a timely manner and then allow for the facility to be open, that we are bringing it forward for council's consideration at this point in time, and that's the significant main reason for the timing of this coming tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Sutton. Any other questions? Councillor Callender.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. $750,000 is a lot of money, and as Councillor Sutton-Legault mentioned, it seems to have just come out of nowhere. And we're constantly being told that budgets are tight. So what's got to give? Like, is something else being pushed out so that the money can be reallocated to this pool?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So as I noted, it will be looking to become from our building renewal program, and we will have to obviously manage that now very tightly, the building renewal program over the course of this financial year, to be able to accommodate that, to allow for this spend to be moving forward. So that's where that's coming, and we'll have to. So I don't think it will compromise, because that program isn't necessarily fully planned for the year and have full allocations, but it will be something we need to manage tightly over the coming financial year.
But, so a question off the back of that, as part of the budget deliberations and the disclosures, there is a capital works schedule which discloses all the investments that are happening from a capital works perspective. And this obviously wasn't on that. So are you saying that that you'd be managing to retain that, or would something potentially be pushed off that into future years?
The building renewal program does have, thank you for the question, Councillor, I do apologise for that. The building renewal program does have some projects allocated, but it's not fully allocated in terms of the amount that's put forward each financial year. Elements of that element of that funding can be used in this space. It will mean, though, we might have to look at some of the projects that were put in that space to push to a later financial year. But we also look at the building renewal program where criticality comes into play. And if we look at the fact that we're in the midst of this work, and that it is an asset that strategically we want to keep open until the potential of the Western Aquatic Facility is open, that we're recommending that we complete this work and allow the facility to reopen in September of this year.
Thanks for that response. And then next question, just wanting confirmation and clarity on this. Does this still mean that Council's intent in the future is to demolish the Laverton pool?
Thank you for the question. If I go back to the strategic position, it is the intent that Laverton Swim and Fitness Centre will remain open until such point in time as a Western Aquatic Facility is constructed and built. And so that's still the position of Council at this point in time.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callender. Seeking a mover. Moved Councillor Grimmer
Second.
and seconded Councillor Marston. Councillor Grimmer as the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this decision to assist recreation upgrading and that's going to undertake at the Laverton Swim Fitness Centre pool. The work will put the facility in life with saving Australia's guidelines for safe pool operations and provide improved amenities for members and non-members. And I'll speak.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer. Councillor Marston's the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this allows the CEO to spend a little bit more than his mandate, given that 1.15 million is expected to be the council contribution and to be matched by the operator to do capital renewal. It's up to this council to invest in structural repair in order to keep the facility open. If we don't spend this money, then the facility would have to be closed immediately.
Thank you, Councillor Marston. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Sutherland, go.
Thank you. Whilst I have no wish to restrict the capacity of the facility to remain open, I do object to the timeliness or lack thereof of this recommendation coming before Council. And again, it is not just about increasing the CEO's delegation, it is also about increasing the spend on a major project by over $500,000 in addition to what was already allocated. And I believe councillors should be given more time to consider these important recommendations, and I believe a week is insufficient. And whilst I won't ask for deferral, because I don't think that would be successful, I'm not willing to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton-Legault. I'll go back to speakers for the motion. Councillor Breffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm very happy to support this motion. It's important that we keep the, a pool in the western part of the municipality. We don't have the Western Aquatic Centre yet anyway, so it's important that the facility continues. And frankly, it's for a future council to consider the future of Laverton as well. So I'm not for a moment thinking that, Laverton is going to necessarily end, that its future is whatever the next council wants it to be, I guess. But yeah, thank you. Happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Breffer. I'll go back. Are there any other speakers against the motion? Any other speakers?
I'm happy to speak to the motion, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Canada.
I feel that there's been a lot of flip-flopping happening in relation to the Laverton pool, and it pains me to see the decision-making and the impact that this is having on residents who are obviously passionate about keeping their pool. It was noted today that Council's opening position was to demolish the pool with no further investment to be made into it. And then an amount of $400,000 was made available a year ago to address what was deemed nothing more than to keep the lights on. And now we're seeing a new service provider who's obviously doing good things, willing to chip in over $1 million with council, adding an additional $750,000 to improve amenity at the pool. The decision has literally come out of left field. We did have a budget 2 weeks ago and none of this came up in conversation, absolutely none of it. And tonight, through questions, I fear that something else will be pushed out and we don't even know what that is. We should have been given more time and our residents should also be given more time. What pains me more is the fact that within the background in this report, it talks to this investment being used to meet critical safe pool guidelines. And that tells me that the general needs of the pool have been overlooked for a number of years. I'm glad to see the money going into addressing the needs within Laverton Pool to help keep this pool alive. And I feel that the council really needs to stop playing games on this and stop the flip-flopping. Because when the residents of Williamstown got together to rally for their pool at the Life Saving Club, the changes were made and the intention now is to revise the plans to retain that pool. So why isn't that the case for Laverton? I'm going to end and just call it out and say, save Laverton Pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Canada. And Councillor Grimmer, I'll return to you as the mover of the motion.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge this is not the first time we've had last moment decisions in council, that we've decided on a budget in this council. We've had less than 2 weeks. I would have been happy for a deferral for further discussion on this issue, so that wouldn't have been a problem. We did discuss in the briefing, it wasn't raised as an issue. I'm always happy. It's been in the chambers, it's been briefing, that's who I am. I'll speak to me individually. I'm proud that we're going to have a fit for purpose for the wetlands. I think it's urgency to have something. Other pools in the other municipalities and other areas are really highly impacted, and I'm happy that I go to my local pool with my children. I'm sure the Laverton residents who helped supported and funded the pool, including my family members who helped get this pool open. So I'm sure they'll be delighted with this outcome. It's a fair outcome. And as I and Mayor and Councillor Tyler, who represent the area, who consistently rock up to every, briefings, chambers, have a discussion and a long history with this issue, and we attend consultation, I'm going to support this initiative that will provide up to 10 years certainty of services and continue at a higher level. And that's what the wetlands in my community that I've served and been at the Laverton Pool since a baby and still continuing deserve. So thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Grimmer. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And all those against? The motion is carried. Councillors, the next item is 9.1.1, Audit and Risk Committee Update, May 2024. Are there any questions? Seeking a mover.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor Marston and a seconder. Councillor Sutton, the go. Councillor Marston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You and I serve as voting members on the Audit and Risk Committee, so this material will be familiar to you because it's largely the minutes of the meeting, but there's a couple of things that I should communicate to our colleagues, including the change of chair, well, the reappointment of Mr John Watson as the Audit and Risk Committee chair for the next 12 months. He took over from Lisa Tripodi, who had chaired the organisation for some time, chaired the committee for some time. And another significant change is that Iqbal Halim, who was the independent member, has stood down due to work commitments elsewhere, and I offered a vote of thanks, which was seconded by Lisa Tripodi, and then a note of thanks from council staff as well. Iqbal was a very diligent and competent independent member, and I'd like to thank him again in this context for his work, for keeping our council on the straight and narrow. All of the discussion points are listed in the minutes, and I encourage my colleagues to read it, just to make sure that you're across the work that the voting members in the shape of John Watson as the independent member and chair, Lisa Tripodi as the outgoing chair and independent member, me and yourself, along with the whole list of people who are active in keeping a close eye on internal undergoings for the council, scrutinising all programs and decisions, and speaking in a very frank manner about risks and opportunities that present to us, and how we can be prepared for any eventuality. So I'd like to thank you, Mr Mayor, for assisting me in this work, and again to thank Iqbal Halim for his work on the committee.
Here, thank you, Councillor Marston. Councillor Sutton, the go. Seconder.
Thank you. I served on the Audit and Risk Committee for several years, and I found it a very well-run and interesting committee to be part of. And it's good to know that there are other eyes on the work that we do, and they can ask questions, and we can be part of that discussion. And I'd also like to acknowledge the reappointment of Mr John Watson as the ARC Chair for the next 12 months, and thank everyone for their work on this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton, the go. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Marston, I'll turn to you. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor, next item is 9.2, Delegate Report. Are there any questions on the two reports? I'm seeking a mover. Moved by Councillor Sutton, the go.
Second.
And seconded by Councillor Marston. Councillor Sutton, the go.
Thank you. We have two reports here, and I serve as delegate on both of these committees. One is the Metropolitan Transport Forum monthly meeting, attended by representatives from 26 councils, and always interesting discussions. And I think transport generally is one that seems to be constantly in our conversation. I listened to the conversation about the airport link. It makes me want to hit my head very hard against something. But at least we are talking about it. There's still lots of conversations about how we still need more buses in and out of the city, and the gaps in our cycling and walking networks. So there's always something to talk about in this area. And of course, we're also looking at what we do with charging all these electric vehicles that seem to be popping up everywhere. So I encourage the community to have a look at the report on that. The Western Melbourne Tourism Board is always a very interesting board, again, with representation from councils through the West. And we're in the process of delivering our Namaste project, for which the organisation had funding, as well as their Eat, Drink, Westside 2024 and Westside Wanderers program, which a recommendation for that to continue. The West can be a little bit left out of tourism, so we need to do all we can to encourage new tourists and tourism to come back to the West. And it's very interesting what the group is doing, and I'm very happy to be actively part of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton Legault. Councillor Marston as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Pamela Sutton Legault for her representation on both committees. Thank you for the work you do. I just want to shout out Gus Brown from Hobsons Bay, who's our guy on the Metropolitan Transport Forum. He provided an update on integrated transport projects, including the delivery of the Champion Road shared use path, which is much used. Build it and they will come. The near completion of new shared use paths constructed by the Westgate Tunnel Project, which are almost ready to be opened, and planning for upcoming projects including the Spotswood Green Line, Maddox Road safety upgrades, and the safer speed limit staging plan, wherein we aim to reduce speed limits to make walking, cycling, and in general life in the vicinity of these areas much more pleasant and safer for children in particular.
Thank you, Councillor Marston. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor, I'll do just that. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we have not received any notices of motion. Do we have any urgent items of business to be raised? And I understand we haven't received any supplementary public questions, and so, councillors, with that, I'll close the meeting at 8:26. Thank you all. Thank you to staff and to members of the public gallery who have joined us, as well as to those online. Have a really good evening. Take care.
Thanks, Mayor.